political sciences. Thank you, everyone, to have come here. And we don't want this to be a static debate, so you are free to take the floor at any time. I have very bad eyesight, so you need to make big gestures if you want to be able to speak. So, of course, we could have started on a very philosophical tone to answer this question, but I decided that that would perhaps be somewhat tricky and perhaps a little bit boring because too theoretical. So we'll divide into three parts. The first will be on the uses of the audience. Those who are the readers, Senegal, Haiti, and Egypt. We want to find out how the public interact with the internet and traditional media. The second part is about how we can check information found on social media, how we know who is behind a particular video which has been posted on YouTube, how can you then use it as a source of information, and so we will find out how this gets integrated into the newsroom. And as you always need three parts in a debate, we will then talk in more general terms about where each of these countries is at in terms of the media revolution. And this is particularly the case since 2 years in some countries. And so what the interactions are with the public and what are the new tools which are being implemented in order to keep the population informed. We have Bouba Saw, who is here in the green shirt, who is in charge of the website and mobile services for the Soleil newspaper in Senegal. It's a newspaper whom you've all heard about. It's a public newspaper. Bouba Saw, you were previously in charge of a blog, Dakar Bondi blog. From the French speakers among you, you will know that the Bondi blog is one which covered the riots in France a few years ago and who developed antennas in France and Switzerland in various cities. And in Dakar, it was the first time that we had the Bondi blog elsewhere than in France and in Switzerland. We also have here Godson Pierre, who is a journalist and IT consultant. You are a writer and a presenter for a radio station, and you coordinate the actions of the alternative media group, who tries to aid the diffusion of information with a democratic aim. And we are also hosting Ehab and Zelaky. You are manager of development and change for an Egyptian newspaper called the Egyptian Independent. You're also in charge of all the mobile services and all the digital developments in a general manner, and also of the change in competencies within the newsroom from print media to digital media. Is that right? Yes. So we're going to start this first part. I would like each one of you to be able to take a photograph of the public who read you. Are they mobile? Are they on social networks? Or are they more orientated towards traditional media? We'll talk with you, Bouba Saw. You have about 13 million inhabitants in Senegal. You have an exceptionally high rate of mobile penetration with 11.5 million mobile users. Can you tell us a few words about your public? Thank you. Good afternoon. So just to add a few words to how you presented me, the Soleil is a paper newspaper. It's a national newspaper, a public service one. It has been 42 years in existence, and the last few years it has been taking a turn towards all the new technologies, internet, mobile, etc. It's not easy neither towards our public nor internally, because it's a very old publishing house with set habits, and of course we a public services organization, and our general manager is named by presidential decree, and our news team means that we have to relay all the government information. So we operate under a certain number of constraints. That's just to give you a bit of background. Regarding the mobile aspect, to treat that fairly quickly, unfortunately, we have fallen behind a little in our organization, so we now need to catch up a little, because there have been more and more studies and statistics which demonstrate that you need to move very fast, both for mobiles and for pads. So we have fallen behind, but we're trying to catch up as quickly as we can. Regarding internet and social media, social networks, our internet site, statistically speaking, our public doesn't come from Senegal. Only 12% of our internet our internet public comes from Senegal. They mostly come from other countries in the world, maybe Senegalese people elsewhere in the world, which also means that we need to be fairly selective regarding the web content, because the need that we are fulfilling is not the same as the one we are fulfilling with the paper edition, bearing in mind that we do a mix of products between the paper newspaper and the online version, which has only recently been implemented. So that is the first point. The second point, you'll remember I mentioned a couple of constraints. So we don't really engage in debates. We try to structure the interactivity as much as possible. Therefore, we use social networks, especially Facebook, because it's the means which allows us to give the most structure, both in what is published by our visitors, but also to be able to moderate it, even if we are very open. Nevertheless, there are certain things which we cannot allow through. Can you give us some examples? Well, for example, when a certain number of Senegalese websites can do what we commonly call write offensive words about our head of state, that is something that we cannot allow ourselves. So, for example, please can you give us an example? We were talking about this earlier with fellow countrymen. A lot of these websites have a forum, and it actually becomes a continuous exchange of insults. They become personal attacks. They become extremely tendentious quotes regarding political and religious topics, and we have a big debate at the moment on the subject of homosexuality. This very often, very quickly goes too far, and we feel that this doesn't really play towards the positive development of interactivity. So we have tried as many technical means as possible in order to structure and control the debate. Gotsen, you also have the question of diaspora, which is very significant, with a public which is not exclusively concentrated on your territory. Could you tell us a little more about your situation in Haiti? We know that in Haiti the radio is one of the most popular media. Is that still the case? Yes, absolutely. And I will add that with the internet in Haiti, we are experiencing a paradox. It is a medium which has an impact in Haiti, but where the public is nevertheless fairly relative in some ways, because it is a country which still has a illiteracy proportion of 50%. That represents about 10,000 Haitians who do not know how to read or write. So that is on the one hand, and then on the other hand, we also have a very significant diaspora. 1/10 of the Haitian population lives outside the territory. Therefore, internet has taken on a lot of importance. Thanks to internet, the Haitian media, especially the radios, are able to broadcast internationally towards this diaspora. And so we take account of this diaspora in our programming. So, for example, Haitians who live abroad used to be left behind, but actually now they represent 45 to 50% of the participations in open line debates on the radio. So, thanks to internet, we have the participation of Haitians who live outside Haiti. So that is one point. The second point is that in Haiti, internet is a medium which is a graphic, which is written, but which is set against the background of an oral or a verbal culture. Before we used to say that it was a country where we had a lot of spread of rumors, and now internet is multiplying these rumors in some ways. And therefore, similarly, it is a medium which has a very high impact and a lot of information which will be very present in the media agenda, sometimes arise from social media. And we realize that some information which is flowing like rumors through social networks end up becoming information which have a real impact in Haitian life. Recently, a minister had to leave her job this week after it was discovered that she was actually of a foreign origin, because the Haitian constitution does not allow foreigners to occupy these positions. Right from the start of her nomination, that was a few months ago, the information was already circulating around the social media that this person was actually a foreigner. And references had to be given on the internet, which allowed you to go and see that she had an American ID card, and you could see it on such and such a website. So you can see that how the internet can have an impact, can have a direct impact in the real life in Haiti. And the public, if we can talk about the public in itself, it's a very small part of the Haitian population, but I would say that it is the strategic public, because these are the decision makers who go and consult internet every day. And these are also the social leaders. They are the decision makers in a general manner. And therefore, when we include the internet as a part of the advocacy for an organization or an institution, the internet is a way of joining this public in a very direct manner. Yes, we'll come back to this idea of how you can verify information, and for example, what started off as being just a rumor about this minister. So, given that 1 out of 2 adults in Haiti neither reads nor writes, what do you do in Haiti? Does that mean that you give more emphasis to sound and image and avoid text? And then the second question, how do those people interact with you? Therefore, do they, for example, record themselves on a telephone and then send you the soundtrack, or what do they do? It's indirectly that those people are affected by the internet. Those people are touched by or affected by the content of internet, but indirectly. That's why I was talking earlier about the oral culture on the island. What is on the internet very quickly spreads from those people who have been to consult the page and enters into the social and public debate. Therefore, it's not like for written text. The people who read a newspaper are not very numerous, but once they've read it, then of course they share what they have read. And the phenomenon of the mobile phone has given a lot of emphasis to this practice of oral rumor spreading. Because if only 10% of Haitians have access to internet, however, now with the mobile phone, there are more than 4.5 million Haitians who have access to the internet. That's more than half of Haitians across all the country. So once the information has left the internet and enters the social fabric, now, well, this goes hand in hand with the mobile phone.
Vous avez encore une autre.
Then you have a different audience. You told me before we started this debate that it was not 20% of web users in Egypt, but a lot more than that. And now, can you tell us a little more who actually uses your digital services? And you also have a breaking news system, text messaging system, and for subscribers, it's in English and in Arabic. Now, do you already have facts and figures on that audience?
Good evening. I'll let you tell you some of the figures about the space of internet in Egypt today, and our visitors, our audience. We are like 90 million of population for last figures. And for the last report I had, that we had like 32 million people connected to the internet now in Egypt. So it's look like around 30 or 30-something% of the people are connected, which is a good ratio, taking on consideration the percentage of illiteracy in Egypt and low standard economic conditions and everything. So we have now like 33-34% of the population is connected over the internet, either through PCs, mobile phones, mostly mobile phones, broadband connections, or maybe some slower connections. And that's a good amount of money. Regarding the audience, we are an Masry Youm with an independent newspaper. It's established only 9 years ago. And it was one of the daily newspaper, printed edition newspaper, who is independent in Egypt at that time. And during this short period of time, we've been like number 1 or 2 regarding the circulation of the printed edition, and we have a very strong presence over the internet with a portal, the Arabic portal I'm speaking on. We have some English service, but I'm speaking on the Arabic portal. We have like 300,000 visits a day for this portal. And on the other hand, we are expanding on the social media sphere, that we had like 1.2 million follower on our Twitter page, 1.3 million on our Facebook page. And through these, and we have also a presence on Google+. We have like 300,000 people following us there. And with these figures, we have a very strong ties with our audience regarding we have like a circle of trust, generally speaking. And when we are saying the numbers coming from the tools we are trying to measure how things going, we have it the highest rate of engagement with the user. So there is some competitors, they have a more presence on Facebook as example, but they have a more lower engagement rates with their readers. That's from my point of view, I think that expresses the trust the user are seeing in our newspaper. So they are engaging. Engagement with our services means, in most cases, commenting. They are commenting, saying their views about the news we are publishing. Sometimes they are saying what they see in the service they have from us. And most of the time, we have this divided things all the time. The political divide happening in the street, especially after the revolution, turned into a very high polarization in the society between the political. even the ordinary people who are not being engaged in parties and in political movements, they have now an opinion. Sometimes it's very extreme, either left or right or something like that. But they are expressing their point of view all the time through the comments. In fact, we've gave them, with this development thing we are on, we've gave them 3 different type of commenting on the website. First, they can register on the website and then comment through our regular system of commenting. Secondly, they can comment through their Facebook account. And third, and this is the last thing we had this module of like to say yes or no about an article. And it is represented in a very nice visual way, like yes or no. And then you have the yes opinion on one column and the no opinion on the other column. And this works very fine. This is a very new service we are introducing. And it's working very nicely with especially with the opinion articles. So from visually you can seek the yes or no thing. And from our digital services, we have an SMS service that we are sending breaking news to our subscribers. And this kind of thing is turning into a very new economy model for the newspaper. So we've already have the news, we've already have our correspondent, our reporter, our everything, and we have the news itself. And we are introducing it as a break service to the subscribers. We have a very good page of subscribers, even if they are paying a very little amount of money, monthly basis. But it turns to be a profit source for the organization without investing more and more in, making news or something like that. And also, the bigger base of subscribers in this service reflect the credibility we are trying to make in our news and the trust we have with the visitor.
Alors ça va nous faire une transition toute trouvée.
Right, so that will be a very good transition for the central part, which is how can we actually double check rumors, potential sources of information, that there are so many of them in the digital era, because each journalist will actually follow up to 1,000 accounts on Twitter, on Facebook, and other social networks. And so in your newsrooms, I mean, how can you actually check something before you publish it? Do you have rules? And have you already made mistakes? And if so, can you give us an example, please? Thank you.
First of all, regarding this, we have a very strict rules about what we are officially publishing. What we are officially publishing is what we are, the stories we are publishing on the website or on our official pages over Twitter or Facebook. So, whenever we had any information through, like, say, social media or anything circulating over the internet, we never publish it before we have our own journalistic procedures. So, even which is checking the main sources of the story. If the one who wrote it on the internet is one of the sources, so we contact him personally to have like a statement or something, and then we are looking for the other parts of the story to have the other different views about this, and we've trying all the time to double check the sources by checking another source about this if it is something big. Most of the time it has been like scanned documents or some this secret paper or something like that, and we never publish this in this condition. Even some of our competitors are in the type of competition and hurrying up to publish something, and sometimes it turns into a disaster for them, because it tends to be a fake documents and thing. And of course, mistakes happens, but we are correcting.
Can you give us an example?
I can give you an example of this. That sometimes it was a verdict in some court, and we have this lawyer from inside the court and telling that the verdict is like three for somebody is like that and that. And he is a credible source for us. He's known, a known name. And we made a check with our correspondent, but he was delayed in providing us with the sentence officially. So our guys, in hurrying things, they took the quote from the lawyer, and tends to be some error in the sentence, and we have to change it as quickly as we can.
It was without internet.
It happens, but you know, we have the process of correction, and most of the time we have the culture of apologizing if we are made some mistake. We need to apologize about it.
Oui, on peut revenir sur cette histoire de course
Back to this race. I mean, you just talked about this race, the fact that everybody wants to publish as quickly as possible. Is it a race for more information? Is it a race for the truth? Because we say we will publish real time. Now, what are the rules that you impose upon your journalists to actually fact check every piece of information, and at the same time provide as much information as you can, as quickly as you can? Well, internally at the Soleil, we have a validation process. There's a first level of validation, which is me. So whenever I receive an information, I actually read, double check, etc. If I have a doubt, then there is a second level, which is the general coordinator of the newsroom, coordinating the paper, the different sections of the newspaper, sports, etc. And if we still have a doubt, or if we disagree, then the third level is the general director, who is in charge of the publication. And how long does it take? And he's the one who decides. It used to be quite slow, but there are several reasons for that, actually. The previous coordinator of would turn off his mobile phone, and so I would have problems actually working with him. But slowly but surely things changed, and he understood that there were new obligations because of the web, so things go faster now. That being said, we've decided to go as quickly as possible, but at the same time we want to be particularly cautious, careful, because I have to say that at the end of the day I'm quite happy with the speed at which we go. Now, there might be mistakes, yes, of course. I could give two examples. The first one would be one mistake that we actually made when there was this coup in Mali in April 2012. I received from a press agency, which is a Pan-African, Accra News, a Pan-African news agency, and they said that Amadou Manitouri had been arrested. And I got that piece of information. I tried to double check everything with different sources and contacts. I tried to check on different internet sites, social networks, other news agencies, etc. And indeed, I didn't have any other source confirming that piece of news. So I went up one level in terms of validation because I had this doubt. And they said, well, if it is APA, this news agency, then it's all right. And given that I wasn't convinced, I still moved up one level, and I got the same answer. They said, well, if it's APA, it's all right. So I published it. And after 2.5 hours, there was still nothing. We certainly rely on RFI, the French network. And even on RFI, they wouldn't talk about it, so we decided to delete that information from our site. And did you actually say, well, you might have read this, we decided to withdraw that information, and did you say why, or did you just delete it? No, we just deleted it, and there's this very simple reason for that, actually, which is that I believed that the number of people who had actually seen that breaking news was very low. And second example is very telling. We've just had a debate on misappropriations, and there are quite a few sentences that there are. Yep, and there are quite a few people who are prevented from leaving the territory, and actually we talked to different members of the police forces, and a couple of weeks ago I think that some radios and the social networks and some internet sites actually started saying that the Director General of the National Police had to quit his job and would be replaced by somebody else. And I wasn't there. I called the newsroom and I said, well, look, apparently the Director General of the police forces had to resign. And they said yes, but we asked the presidency to actually send the decree to confirm that. And in our newsroom meeting or conference, we had a hefty debate, because some said, well, as long as we don't have the decree, it's a non-event, so we won't publish it, and others wanted to publish it. And we decided not to publish it, and it was not even published in a paper version the next day. So only 2 days afterwards did we decide to publish that information, when we had that presidential decree saying that the guy had to quit. And so we were right in a way, because quite a few newspapers and quite a few sites had made a mistake on the successor, on the newly appointed guy. And so these are two quite different examples, but very telling, I think. Then, as far as information coming from these social networks is concerned, there are two levels. We have to be very, very careful. That's because of our status, of course. We are very careful with that information. And I've come to realize one thing, and maybe my fellow countrymen could say whether they agree or not. But I mean, it all depends on the subject matter, really. Everybody says that democracy changes and that there are changes in power, etc. But internet networks and mobile phones play a fundamental role in those democratic transitions, because it's based on that you get the results from the different voting polls, etc. So we know it is credible. We know that these trends are reliable, and when that's the case, we lose less information. So for the political life, it's a plus. It's correct quite often. Yes, for the latest election, in any case, it was. I realized, I mean, looking at the sites that I regularly follow and monitor to actually see new trends, I realized that there was a lot less wrong information than in other issues. Because in other areas there might be quite a few rumors. Could it be on sports? Well, it can be on anything, and on a new appointments, when people say, well, this guy is going to be held in custody, etc. Audience questions from the audience, maybe, on those checks you have to carry out before publishing anything. Microphone for the speaker, please, otherwise the interpreters cannot hear. Thank you. Microphone for the interpreters, otherwise the interpreters cannot hear the speaker. Thank you.
Merci.
Jean Kouchner, je suis secrétaire général de l'Union de la presse francophone.
You said you had a privileged relationship with the government, Le Soleil. I mean, you can talk about that, but that's what I understood. And I just wanted to know whether, when checking the information, That's very interesting, by the way, because, I mean, we don't want to publish information all too quickly. You need to check it first, even if other people have checked it. I mean, you want to double check everything. Is that always the case? Or sometimes for other information which have no link with the government or with the state, I mean, would you have the same approach? Or do you have the same approach? Yes, in a way. By saying that, I mean that whatever our editorial approach, I would say that we can claim to have a good or even very good newsroom or team of journalists. We have trained journalists who have a true methodology, very rigorous, very professional, etc. So yes, we systematically have the same approach, whatever the information. Now that being said, then we sort the information, of course. And we might have a privileged, and this privileged relationship that we have also depends on who is in power. And if it's the former president of the republic, then we had a much more privileged relationship because we had people within the presidency constantly, because we had people at the primature constantly. In other words, the two of the three public bodies, ARTS, radio and TV, and that was us, Le Soleil, which is no longer the case. With the new regime, we were sidelined. We're all sidelined anyway. And so we have nobody left on site, so it's a lot slower. And that relationship is a bit less privileged. Then the question would be, of course, isn't it better? But anyway, I don't know. That's another topic.
Syria. My question is for my Egyptian friend. How did your relation with the social media changed, if it changed during the first phase of the Egyptian revolution, since the most information that we got was through social media, not the independent media in Egypt, neither the regime media. And how did you manage to be a real competitor to the social media at the time? And my second part, did that ever made you change your mind about how you are dealing now with the social media, since you are still mentioning the rules and stricter rules and double sourcing and all these things right now? Thank you.
Okay, quick, of course, social media generally has a boom in Egypt after the revolution. Many of the people does not at least using tools like Twitter before the revolution, but now we have many and many are using it everywhere. Mostly we are using social media from our part as an organization, media organization, to promote our work as a marketing tool most of the time. But many times we are using it to know some information at a time that we cannot compete in with the speed of it. You know, no news media can have correspondent in every place, in every time, and at everywhere. So most Egyptian activities, most Egyptian people who are using Twitter, they are using it from mostly from their mobile phone, from moving, and most of the time during the last 2 years we have tens of demonstrations, tens of strikes, tens of things erupted suddenly, and most of the time you never know that something is happening at this time, but you catch the line from social media. We cannot compete social media in reporting at real time. It's impossible. But what we are doing now is trying, if something is erupted, if somebody is reporting that there is a clash now happening someplace, so we are immediately, as fast as we can do, send somebody to start give us reports, some of our reporters or correspondent to write about what's happening now, or give us some insights, some reports. On the other time, we have another platform. Another platform is dedicated to citizenship journalism. We have something like a live blog platform that we use to publish some of the tweets and some of the things people are posting over social media. But it's you know that it's like organized things about one incident happening now. So this is a totally separate platform away from our own main portal. But we are using, we are keep monitoring social media, of course, and whenever something erupted, definitely in 90% of the time they are knowing it, people are in the action, who wrote, not reporting about the action, they are in the action itself. So, and we're trying to follow as fast as we can what's being circulated over the social media. That's the situation in very short words.
Sur le live blogging,
As far as live blogging is concerned, because your answer basically is to say, well, in live blogging, I put tweets regularly before checking them, before publishing them, but people might understand that it's the truth, but the next minute it might not be the truth. And so, is that something that was a cause of concern for you? Was it a problem for you, or do you actually think that that this logic, when you say, well, I publish, but maybe the next minute it's going to be wrong, is not a problem, or is it a problem for you?
Saying we have a separate platform.
oui, mais il y a votre marque, there is your brand.
Yes, you know, we have our brand, but we have, this is a special platform dedicated to what citizens is saying without checking it. Okay, we are trying to just to gather what are people saying around some event. Sometimes, most of the time, it was a breaking news, something happening. Some clashes, some demonstration, turn it into violence and something. So we are grouping this. This is something besides our normal coverage of this event with our reporter, with our checking the facts, checking to make sure that this is right. This is another platform. Okay, you can reach this platform through the portal from Masry Youm, but it happened that in the context. The whole context is that this is something different than El Masry Youm.
Okay. Godson, vous, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de la...
Now, what do you think about the way in which we check pseudos on the internet, and how can you work on that, on this methodology? Well, we actually work like journalists. As journalists have always worked, so we go on site, we get in touch with the different people, stakeholders, to report information. Yes, but when information comes from the social networks and you're in the newsroom and you're not on site, not yet, well, that's precisely what we do. Because if on Facebook somebody talks about an incident or an accident or anything that might have happened, then we don't just report what is being reported on Facebook, but we go out there and double check. So for us, Facebook is just an alarm. It's same for Twitter. I mean, usually there are different sources. There is an internet site that you can visit, and that leads to an institution, to a person, somebody who is credible. But when it comes with a picture, usually what we do is that we try to have an authorized source. And if it is an accident, then why not get in touch with the civil protection services? If it is the number of victims of a natural disaster, then there are institutions, bodies we can talk to who can provide us with credible information. And sometimes it's well below what is being said on Facebook. And indeed, very often, the stakeholders or people going through that situation and living that event are in advance of journalists. But we would rather be late than having to rectify things afterwards.
En général,
I would say that generally speaking, we don't publish things directly. What comes to us, it's a rule for us. It goes through the editing process, so there are people who go through the information. We have procedures to follow, and there's a second edition before it is allowed to be published on the website. Now, when we have photos, it has happened that we have published photos taken from Facebook or Twitter. Do you ask for authorization in advance? On Twitter, we publish photos taken by colleagues or people from our own circle, and we say that this photo comes from Twitter and giving the address of the person who published it as a Twitter, and that person has the copyright for the photo. And this for well-known facts or events which everyone is following. For example, the audition of the dictator Jean-Claude Duvalier that is taking place in the law courts, and we have colleagues present who tweet texts and photos, and we ourselves at that time will use on our Twitter link this material. So we stay in contact with them through Twitter, but of course when it comes to writing stuff up, we need to create a text, we need to bring in the actors of social movements, of people responsible for human rights, the judicial authorities. For us, that is what we put into a text, and those leaders contribute a lot to the credibility of the medium. And for us, there are media. Internet in itself is not a medium. Internet is a tool which belongs to a territory or to a society, and within this territory we can have media, but there are individuals, there are organizations, there are citizens who use resources, communication resources, but the media have an information task to carry out, and their role, their mission, and that is precisely why the public refers to these media. We are not allowed to get things wrong. There are two questions on this side and two other questions. I would just like to respond to what you have said, and also to what Sophie Cambra. A photo from Twitter or Facebook which you use, even if you show the person who has used it, it's not necessarily the person who has taken the photograph. I can remember at the time of the earthquake in Haiti, the French media got things very wrong, and I remember that the newspaper Libération published a photo of the earthquake in Haiti, but actually it was taken in Sichuan in China several years earlier, because Libération published this photo which came from a Twitter account, and so it was mistaken. Likewise, there was a publication of a video which they found online, which was in fact an earthquake in California, which had taken place 4 days earlier. So it seems to me that mentioning the source of the photo is not sufficient. What do you do to check it? Well, the case that I was talking about is more photos taken by colleagues who are present in a courtroom and who are tweeting and who are sending photos. And in that case, we will publish. to be giving information live. But it is not part of our method of work to go and look for photos on Twitter or Facebook to publish. And so we have three speakers. Abdul Samar from Algeria. I wanted to respond to the rumors created on social media. I noticed that you reduced social networks a lot to citizens. However, there are also government organizations present, and also the presence of the secret services who are involved on these websites, and they are playing a very significant role. Since, for example, the Arab Spring, there's an awful lot of information circulating on the social media talking about terrorists and talking about NATO. And what we've seen is that there are organizations, public and powerful organizations linked to the powers that be, who are publishing information which is being influential. So we should not reduce the social media to the citizens. No, there are rumors spread by powerful organizations. Now, coming back to the question of rights, we in Africa, in the Arab world, we are fighting to defend human rights. I think the day when we will be able to defend human rights on social media, that will be the day when we'll be able to publish information that citizens cannot obtain elsewhere. When we will be able to free up social spaces, then I'm sure that that those media will be mature enough to be able to sort out the problem of where you have sourced the photograph. Perhaps you could respond.
I will speak about this. Yes, there is many of rumors spreading day and night through social media. If I speak about the Egyptian sphere, yes, indeed, it happens, and it's a part. It's a very strong part used from different political parties to defend their point or to make some false accusation against the others. It's part of the disorientation and polarization happening in the community in general. But regarding publishing it on a media outlet, this is another story. I don't think that any decent Egyptian media is circulating such rumors or republishing them through their own site. And sometimes, if the media itself is starting to publish some uncredited or unsourced reports, I think they are paying a very high price from their credibility. So generally, I don't think you will find some rumors, pure rumors circulating over the internet appearing on the decent website speaking about the Egyptian sphere. But regarding Al-Masry Youm as example, we are taking very care of trying to check before publishing on what we have our name on.
Bonjour, David Servenet de France.
Hi, David Servenet from France. I remember, or you reminded me, an intervention made by Andy Carvin at 4M. He curates for NPR, National Public Radio in the USA, and who has tweeted all the Arab Spring the last 2-3 years. And after about 140,000 Twitters, he said that he got things wrong about 4 or 5 times in broadcasting information. But he said it wasn't very serious, but in the 4 or 5 minutes which followed the publication of these wrong informations, these got corrected by the people who were following his Twitter feed. So I get the impression that you don't really trust your readers. So, for example, with France 24, you have in Observer's organization. So you have kind of super rereaders who come from the internet public, and can they be people who can verify the information if you have a doubt? Oh, just to a point, they don't actually check. No, they only help check. It's slightly different. So, for example, they would go to the place that a video was supposedly taken to make sure that the color of the footpath is the same as the one that was in the video published, but they're not going to check the whole veracity of a video of an information. For us, it's not so much a question of trust. I would say that the work of a journalist is not to just fish around for stuff on Facebook or Twitter. A journalist needs to look for information, and there needs to be a process of taking contact with the agents, and they need to actually be out on the ground, and they actually need to physically check things. I would say that, and this is how we work, we have our website, which is linked to the movement, spaces for social movements, in particular Facebook and Twitter. Then we also give visibility to what goes on Facebook or on Twitter, but without committing ourselves institutionally in the words that have been said or on the strength of the information. But we also need to note that the media are not spaces for information just in terms of facts and words, but they're also exhibition spaces. And media here have slightly lost this role after 1986. Before that, they used to give a lot of space to social movements. And now we consider that those kinds of spaces, i.e. blogs and networks in a general manner, can be a fantastic source to access these words. And when this discourse is given with authority, then we are able to take it up. And on our website, for example, we have spaces for documentation regarding the positions in human rights or environment or women's rights. These movements, we try to reflect them and to give them a space for expression. And in the information which we write, we listen to the information which is being given out on these networks, as we do the same for society in general. And for us, these are our responses, and the responses which we can find in social networks. When they are given by particularly well-known or authoritative people, then we can take them up. And so therefore we can try to canvass all of the responses either to a fact or to an action in society in general, whether it is the government or whether it is a citizenship issue or whether it's just a matter of general public interest. The lady over here.
Azerbaijan organized crime and corruption reporting project, and well, we saw the example of it just recently in Turkey when mainstream media was basically ignoring the situation and showing penguins, and the only source of information were Twitters for what is going on. And in several cases, there were fake pictures distributed by Twitter users, either to boost to exaggerate the number of rioters or to exaggerate the violence that took place. But it didn't last long because thanks to global hashtags, the users started correcting themselves, the other users. So there were false information and then correction to false information, either rejection or denial of this information. So, but this is good in the countries where mainstream media still has access to what is going on. What to do in the countries like Iran, where you cannot check anything, where then the only hope is to responsible users who will help you to correct information. So, I think there is a need to develop a strategy on how to check this information, how to check information coming to Facebook and Twitter and so on, or rely on other Facebook users, and how to identify the groups that are basically teamed to provide false information. So this is another challenge, but we cannot do anything. We have to. We cannot compete, and we have to provide a space for social media users, citizen journalists. It's otherwise we fail. So we have to cope with this challenge. How? That's the question.
Je pense qu'à un moment donné, c'est une question d'approche.
I think it's also a question of approach, and what I mean by this, we try to avoid the conditional, except on some subjects regarding international news, where we don't say, well, where we say, well, there may have been 15 deaths. We haven't necessarily been able to have enough time to get a precise confirmation as to whether it's 15, 16 or 14 deaths. So in that case, we will give ourselves the margin, the possibility of using the conditional formulation. But regarding local information or countries or regions where we have correspondence, as long as we can't verify and confirm the information, we will wait before publishing. That is a choice which we have made. The second point, as our friend from Haiti was saying earlier, we also take social media as a starting point. There is such or such as such a thing. Okay, that is going to be a starting point which is going to initiate all our journalistic work, traditional journalist work. It's like a human source. A person, even if they are a minister or from an administrative department, which is very official, nevertheless, we will do the same work of verification and balancing and so on. It's a question of a choice, and we will take the time necessary to do it, because there is another question which seems crucial to me. Because of our credibility, on one hand, our notoriety on the other hand, our reputation on the other hand, we shouldn't fall into the trap of giving credibility to information which maybe doesn't deserve it, but which will become credible because it has been written in by Le Soleil. So we also choose to avoid to fall into that kind of trap. Hi, Sofiane Bahai from Tunisia. I'm going to talk about the case which I know best. In Tunisia, we have a lot of trouble relating to information sites, because the more your site gets visits, the more you will have people wanting to give publicity on your website. And so then you will start to get a lot of unverifiable information being published. That means that you will get a high number of visits and you will be able to live the best because you will get the most requests for publicity. But the websites who want to check their information and be more selective will end up just dying out. So yes, credibility is important, but that is not what gives you enough data to be able to stay alive. And so what we have wanted to do is to implement a platform which would be a kind of monitoring to give meaning to credibility with a protocol which would be very straightforward, give a protocol which must be followed by the media, but also to allow the readers to see for themselves which sets are the most credible. But of course, a lot of journalists would be rather unhappy at the idea of being reported on by readers. And of course, we also have a certain number of Western journalists who write their text based on a lot of internet information. And once it has been written, it gets sent to the country itself. And actually, then this distorts. This is distorted information. It is a kind of internal toxification of information. So, for example, there is someone who ended up in prison. It was created a great buzz on the internet, and we tried to check it. We tried to go to the trial courts to see if this was actually a real case. But in fact, they said there was nothing, and yet this made the international media. On this case, when the public responds and does work of correction on the social networks and in the comments and so on, when you work in traditional media, you think that, well, there are so many people online who are correcting us that we'll end up correcting our information. No. The problem of people who are contributing to electronic media is not to give precise information, it's just to earn money. No. So I'm talking about the wrong information and the corrected information. Surely that is a clear point. But the question is, we're going to end up with a totally discredited information. And the problem in Tunisia is that all the media have a bad reputation and a bad image. And so today we have this kind of competition to create traffic for information. And we end up with a lot of unfounded and unverifiable information. And when we try to implement any kind of safeguards, then we are attacked by all the journalists who say, oh, we're not going to be able to stay alive anymore. So this is a real problem. It's not a time when we should implement monitoring to try to control those people who don't verify their information. I would like to respond to this question. To come back to what we were saying earlier, our responsibility is such that we need to take a certain number of precautions. We are in a fragile balance. We are at once open, critical, in favor of multiple forms of expression, and that these various forms of expression should be visible. But in parallel, we need to take precautions which are ethical, and also because of our responsibility. Because Alta Presse is a media which is taken up by other media. It's taken up by the radio, or by the written media, and on the television. And when we get things wrong, of course, this leads to a catastrophe. It's not enough for us to correct. Sometimes it can happen that these other media who've taken up our information are confronted with or have a right of response, and that suddenly becomes very difficult to manage. And that's why we have to take precautions and to take good care of our credibility, because otherwise we immediately lose our credibility, and then what happens is that then this media loses its impact and no longer has sufficient impact to do its work. We don't have access to. We don't have direct access to the public. We only have access to them through the intermediary of the media who take up our information, because the people who go directly to the internet, compared to the total population, only represent a very middling proportion. So it is the radio which broadcasts the information. It is the traditional written media. That's why we're in the mixed media business, the crossed media. And if ever these media should refuse to publish us because our information has lost its credibility, then we are faced with a major problem, because we then will have no impact on the public and we will not be able to reach a wide public. That's why credibility is a strategic issue for us, but it is also a matter of one's responsibility to say the truth and to be able to say that what we are giving out as information is a true information. The gentleman first, and then over there, and then we will start to conclude. And if you'd like to interact further in the last part.
My name is Soleil, I'm from Cambodia. You mentioned a lot, like contacting the source, double checking, and also verifying with the source. I just want to know, like, to what extent that we can use anonymous source from social media in case that we have to publish the article, and how do you explain in the article to the readers that to make the reader trust your information? Thank you.
Sur les sources anonymes, you want
Speaking anonymous sources, this is a problem facing us all the time on the media. But we have some rules regarding citing an anonymous source, which has some reasons to prevent him from publishing his name. The first thing is that at least the reporter knows exactly that anonymous source, have a direct contact with him, maybe a meeting, maybe whatever. And the second thing is that he is very linked to the subject we are talking about. So if he's leaking some documents from ministers or something like that, I must, as a reporter, to check that he is working inside that office so he can have an access to these documents. And these general requirements to make sure that he is a credible source, at least as a beginning, for the journalist is essential. There is no compromising in such measures. And it's passed generally through, sometimes you can have a contact with an anonymous source over the internet, but you have to dig further, you have to make a good relation to gather a good information that he must reveal himself for you as a journalist before you take the risk to publishing on an anonymous source. On the other hand, writing an article or a news story with an anonymous source, you cannot do anything to make the reader believe you are right by some measures, but it came with experience, it came with the credibility, with the name of your media organization over time, that they are believed, they are trusted you, and they know that you have these kind of thing. We have this problem more generally in Egypt, because there is many sources working on some official places, some official ministries, organizations, and so on. So they don't like to speak on their name, because maybe they have some problems in their work. So we have this problem all the time, and the more measures you take, of course, with the complexity of the subject itself you are reporting on, and your reputation as a trusted news organization will make the user believe that you have the right information from the right person, even if you have him like anonymous.
Khaled from Syria. Speaking of credibility.
Sorry, just.
Je veux juste
I just wanted to react to what he just said. In Senegal, we have some press groups which have radio, TV, and daily press, all within the same group. But quite often within the same group, there's disagreements. You might have the daily newspaper saying something, and then the radio might say, well, today's headlines are wrong, but they belong to the same group. So indeed, this issue of the source, it's the question of the source again, question of anonymous sources, and again, we go back to the source, to the question of the race. What are we racing for?
My Egyptian friend said earlier, during the first phase of the Egyptian revolution, the only thing that the mainstream media did is like live streaming of lies and more lies. And a big part of the truth were laying there in the Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts. What motivated people wasn't we are all Masry Youm or we are all Al-Ahram. It was we are all Khalid Said. And I don't know, I mean, like, till when we can just say, like, with the so relaxed, take all the credibility that the professional journalism has, like, it's always credible. What happened in Egypt, like, and Syria and Tunisia and Libya and Yemen and Bahrain, that's nobody's mentioning these days, actually is like they uncovered that the regimes and the mainstream media, also independent media in those countries, were lying for decades. And I think we should be more modest when we start, like now, talking about social media, because they are the people who were anonymous before, and they're still anonymous on the internet right now, but they are telling facts most of the time, and they can correct themselves, and the process is still on. And I cannot accept anymore, and that's not direct to anybody, but I cannot accept anymore, like, just journalists sitting relaxed and say we are credible, and the social media, we need to double source it all the time. I think journalists should be double sources too.
On va, sauf si quelqu'un veut répondre à ça, mais je crois.
Unless somebody would like to react, I think that indeed this is the key question. When the audience react, when people question the way you do your job, when they say that it's visible, it's public, you can tell in Istanbul, I mean, there are spontaneous demonstrations questioning or challenging the Prime Minister, but it's also a challenge to the way in which usually people are informed. And how do you react to the fact that audiences have had enough? And sometimes people say, well, as journalists, we're too laid back, we don't adapt enough to what our audiences would like to see, because are we too restrictive in our investigations? Do we not take enough into account the reactions of the population? Well, I would say that as far as I'm concerned, I do not reject social movements. That needs to be said. But at the same time, you need to realize that the roles are not the same. In both cases, we're talking about information still. And in our work, we always ask ourselves, what do audiences expect from us? People who go on our internet site, do they actually expect that the tweets are posted as such, as they are on our internet site, or the Facebook accounts, should they be relayed as they are on our internet account? I don't think so. I don't think so. People wait for information, facts, of course, hard facts, opinions on facts also, and at the same time they want explanations. They want us to run an extra mile, to go a little farther. In other words, it is our duty to look for information and to provide information, and we need to have that contact with local stakeholders. with what happens on the street, to actually feed back and report a reality which is the reality that these people are going through, living every day. And this is something I would like to insist on. Indeed, we can work with these social networks, the social media, and indeed, we are in a partnership to promote information. So we all play our role, and we all want things to move forward. In other words, to have better information available. That's the objective. Now, that being said, I mean, sometimes we are wrong, and whenever we are wrong, we correct ourselves. And we do that in a rather explicit way. And diplomatically, so to speak, we do that very clearly in an explicit way to say, well, that information that you're currently reading was corrected. And I think it's the least we can do, really. And this is certainly what contributes to the credibility of your media. In other words, whenever there's a problem, or whenever a figure is challenged, whenever the name of whoever is challenged, whenever a place is challenged, which are the key elements of information, the fundamentals, the 101 of information, then we have no other choice. We have to correct that. And we have to say, well, that particular information that you are reading was, we would like to correct. It was published yesterday, but today we believe that this needs to be changed and corrected so that people actually know and are aware of things. It's another way for us to be transparent, I think. It shows that we are transparent, and it certainly involves the audience. And it means that we don't own the information. We play with that information. We don't own that information. We use it. And we all have bits and pieces of information, and we all want to make up that puzzle and show what the reality actually is. Could you actually take stock of the past 2 years since the Arab revolutions, and how long the way has been in terms of how the revolutions developed in your countries, and the food for thought for the future, and how to better interact with your audiences in the future?
Today is most of the situations in Egypt are unstable and still unstable. But I think that media generally, traditional media, may be the most benefit sides of the revolution. We have much more freedom than we had in Mubarak's regime, and we are, struggling more freely with the new elected regime. In fact, we are trying to, as I told you, we have many new jobs, as example, appeared beside the newsroom, the traditional one, shifting heavily from printing with these print schedules, and you have to deal with the first edition and second edition and go home and something, into broadcasting to 24 hours a day. So we some new things emerged. We have now like a full dedicated social media team is working 24 hours to deal with what's happening in social media, either by promoting our material or by scanning and monitoring what's happening to react with our way if something erupted at any time of the day. We have now 2 editors dedicated to breaking news, thanks to the SMS service, and we have also 24 hours broadcasting over multimedia team dedicated. They are producing like 3 or 4 news pieces by video every day. These are something changes, but what is not changing is the way we are doing our work. we still have the same rules. We still are trying to force ourselves not to publish anything in the means of the competition and hurrying up and trying to be faster than your competitors. No, we are having the other approach that we have to check the facts, to check the information before publishing it. And what's my friend Khalid is mentioning here, that yes, of course, the revolutions are an exceptional points of the history of any country, of any thing. But in fact, I'm speaking here about the Egyptian situation itself. The people who are mostly facing the dangers of the last regime, the people who are most facing Mubarak's and the interior minister and everything, they are the traditional media guys, not are the social media people. Social media, yes, it takes a part, a very important part. Yes, of course. Ibrahim Isa, who is facing the trial, Abdul Halim Andil, who is beaten and been on the desert naked, and many other things. And if you are speaking about Khalid Said was with the bid. Yes, it's built around the case, and a very noble case, and most of the Egyptians are formed around this case, of course, but it is not a media outlet. It was a page regarding a case. Yes, it gathered people, it promoted the revolution, it takes the first steps, of course, but look at it now, after 2 years of the revolution. Many debates are, no, it's not an informative, this is not an information center. We have to differentiate between things. And that's only my opinion on this point.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions dans la salle sur...
More questions from the audience on the media revolution, more generally?
Moi, je trouve que c'est très intéressant d'abord qu'on puisse vérifier l'information.
Yes, indeed. I think we need to check facts and using social networks to find information, to digest that information. It's very important. But I feel like it's hard to combine both the principles of journalism and at the same time a development and deep changes. And because the system, our approach is still a vertical approach. In other words, we use the networks to report information, and then we disseminate that in an authorized way. But the great added value of social networks is that it is also journalism. It might be hard to define. It's a bit of a challenge to define that, but it's horizontal journalism as opposed to our vertical journalism. It's very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to live with that, but this is how things work today. And indeed, it's a bit of a challenge for traditional media to actually keep developing. But if you don't take that into account, I mean, we're going to disappear. We're bound to disappear. We have to take that into account. Yes, it certainly depends on the countries. I mean, being in France, it's indeed a change of culture, and all journalists face that it's quite universal as a topic, the culture change from the print to the digital. It was not exactly the object of our debate, to be honest, but I mean, it's a very interesting issue, and there are so many things we could talk about. But I should like to thank you very much. I would like to thank our panelists who decided to take the floor. And thank you for coming. You can, of course, continue talking about those issues online and after this session. Thank you. I'd like to thank our three speakers. Thank you very much.